The morning sun barely lit up the Alaskan sky as Dr. Jeho Park looked through his binoculars. From his research station window, he could see the strange lights in the distance. At first, he thought it was the northern lights, but these lights were different. They moved in ways that nature could not explain. Jeho grabbed his thick winter coat and stepped outside. The cold air bit at his face as he walked to the observation platform. Through his binoculars, he saw something that made him freeze. A large silver ship, about the size of a small house, floated silently over the snowy ground. Aliens, he whispered to himself. Everyone knew about the Rian now. They had come to Earth 6 months ago, saying they wanted to study Earth's wildlife. But this was the first time Jeho had seen them so close to his research station. Jeho watched as 3 tall figures stepped out of the ship. They wore white suits that seemed to glow against the snow. The Rian moved carefully across the ground, carrying strange devices that blinked with blue lights. They were heading towards something in the snow. Jeho adjusted his binoculars and saw what had caught their attention. His heart beat faster. There, in a small hollow, lay a large gray wolf. Next to her were 3 small cubs, barely old enough to walk. The mother wolf wasn't moving much, but Jeho could see she was still breathing. He quickly grabbed his radio. "Sunmai, are you there? Come to the observation platform right now. Bring the long-range camera." A few minutes later, Sunmai arrived, breathing hard from running up the stairs. "What is it, Dr. Park?" "Look," Jeho said, pointing toward the scene. Sunmai raised the camera and gasped. They watched as the Rian scientists moved around the wolf family. One of them, taller than the others, held up a device that created a holographic screen. The alien's long fingers moved across the screen, entering data. Through the camera's powerful lens, Jeho could see the mother wolf more clearly now. She was badly hurt. Her fur was matted with blood on one side, and her breathing was shallow. The cubs huddled close to her, making small whimpering sounds that even the humans could hear from their distance. "They're scanning her," Sunmai said, adjusting the camera. "But why aren't they helping?" The Rian scientists continued their work for several minutes. They took readings, collected samples, and made notes. Not once did they try to help the injured wolf or her hungry cubs. Then, to Jeho's horror, the aliens started walking back to their ship. "They're leaving." Sunma's voice was filled with disbelief. "They can't just leave them." Jeho grabbed his radio again and switched to the emergency channel. All Earth stations had it now, for communicating with Rian vessels. "This is Dr. Jeho Park from Alaska Wildlife Research Station Sun. Rian vessel, do you copy?" After a moment of static, a calm voice replied. "This is Senior Researcher Haeyun. We copy. You're leaving injured animals behind. That wolf needs medical attention. Her cubs won't survive without help." There was a pause before the voice responded. "We have recorded the situation. The adult specimen has a survival probability of 8.3%. The cub's survival chances without maternal care are 2.1%. This is a natural mortality event. We do not interfere with natural selection." Jeho watched as the ship's doors began to close. His hands tightened on the radio. "You can't just." "Thank you for your concern, Dr. Park. Our research protocols are clear. Good day." The ship lifted off the ground, its engines making no sound. As it rose into the gray sky, Jeho looked at the wolf family again. The mother had lifted her head slightly, watching her cubs with tired eyes. Jeho turned to Sunmai. His face was set with determination. "Get the emergency medical kit and the portable heater. I'll prepare the snowmobile." "But Dr. Park, the weather report says." "I don't care what the weather report says," Jeho said, already heading down the stairs. "I'm not leaving them to die." Inside the Rian research vessel, Senior Researcher Haeyun stood at the main control panel. Her long fingers moved across the holographic display as she reviewed the data from their recent observation. The soft blue lights of the ship's interior reflected off her pale skin as she worked. "The data is clear," she said to her assistant, Young Ki, who stood nearby. "Subject 247, adult female gray wolf, shows multiple fracture patterns consistent with a fall. Internal bleeding is severe. Survival chances are now down to 7.9%. Young Ki nodded, his expression neutral as he looked at his own data screen. "The cubs are weakening as well. They haven't eaten in approximately 36 hours. The mother can no longer hunt or provide milk." He-yun pulled up a three-dimensional image of the wolf family's location. Small red dots mark their position in the snowy valley. "Our protocols are clear in such cases. We must document but not interfere. Natural selection must take its course." The ship's communication system suddenly activated. A message from their central command appeared on the main screen. "Research Team 12, report your current status." "Senior Researcher He-yun reporting," she responded. "We have documented a natural mortality event involving 4 specimens. 1 adult female, 3 cubs. Location has been marked for future reference." There was a pause before the response came. "Acknowledged. However, we are detecting human activity approaching the location. Local weather patterns indicate a severe storm system moving into the area." He-yun turned to another screen, bringing up the weather data. The storm was indeed approaching. A dangerous one. She could see a small dot moving from the research station toward the wolves' location. The human doctor was actually going out in this weather. "This is most irregular," Young Ki said, watching the data. "The human's behavior shows no logical pattern. The specimens are clearly non-viable. Why risk human life to reach them?" He-yun zoomed in on the camera feed from outside their ship. The snow was starting to fall more heavily now, and the wind was picking up speed. Through the swirling snow, she could see the wolf mother trying to shelter her cubs with her body. One of the cubs was attempting to nurse, but the mother was too weak to properly respond. "Should we stop the human?" Young Ki asked. "Our protocols state we should prevent interference with natural mortality events." He-yun watched the scanner showing Dr. Park's approach. He was moving quickly despite the dangerous conditions, and he had brought medical supplies. The illogical determination of his actions confused her. "No," she finally said. "The protocols also state we must not directly interfere with human activities unless they threaten our research objectives. We will continue to observe." She brought up a new data entry screen and began to type. "Human behavior note. Subject shows significant deviation from expected survival-oriented responses, choosing to risk personal safety for specimens with minimal survival probability. Further study of this behavior pattern recommended." The storm outside grew stronger. The ship's sensors showed the temperature dropping rapidly. The wolf mother's life signs were getting weaker. He-yun's instruments could detect the slowing of the creature's heart rate. "The human will not reach them in time," Young Ki said. "The storm will force them to turn back. It is the only logical choice." He-yun wasn't so sure. Something about the human's determination made her think otherwise. She had studied Earth's wildlife for 3 years now, but human behavior still surprised her. They often acted against statistical probability, against logic, against their own survival instincts. "We will maintain position at safe altitude," she decided. "Continue recording all data. This might be important to understand." As the storm raged below them, He-yun watched Dr. Park's signal moving steadily closer to the wolves. For the first time in her career, she felt something unusual, a small doubt about the completeness of their protocols. The snowmobile's engine roared as Jai-ho drove through the worsening storm. Snow stung his face despite his protective goggles. Behind him, Sun Li held on tightly, carrying their medical supplies in a large backpack. The wind howled around them, trying to push them off course. The GPS shows were getting close. Sun Li shouted over the engine noise. "About half a kilometer more." Jai-ho nodded, his eyes fixed on the path ahead. The snowmobile's headlights cut through the swirling snow, but visibility was getting worse by the minute. Above them, somewhere in the dark clouds, he knew the alien ship was watching. He wondered what they thought of his actions. The snowmobile's engine suddenly made a worrying sound. Jiho's heart sank as the vehicle began to slow down. "No, not now," he muttered, but the engine sputtered again. The harsh weather was affecting the machinery. "We'll have to walk the rest of the way," he said, stopping the snowmobile under a small grove of trees. "The wolves should be just over that ridge." Sunma checked her tablet as they climbed off the snowmobile. "Dr. Park, the temperature is dropping fast. We have maybe 30 minutes before it becomes too dangerous." "Then we'll work fast," Jiho said, taking some supplies from the backpack. He grabbed the portable heater and emergency medical kit. "Stay close to me. It's easy to get lost in this weather." They trudged through the deep snow, fighting against the wind. Jiho's legs burned with effort, but he kept moving. The ridge seemed to grow taller with each step. Finally, they reached the top, and Jiho pointed his flashlight down into the small valley below. There, huddled in the snow, was the wolf family. The mother's gray fur was barely visible under a layer of fresh snow. The cubs were pressed against her, trying to stay warm. "They're still alive," Sunmai said with relief as they carefully made their way down. As they got closer, they could see the mother wolf's eyes tracking their movement. She was too weak to move, but she still lifted her head slightly, showing her teeth in a weak warning. "It's okay," Jiho said softly, though he knew the wolf couldn't understand him. "We're here to help." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a package of dried meat. He tossed a piece gently toward the cubs. The smallest cub, braver than its siblings, crept forward and sniffed the meat. After a moment's hesitation, it grabbed the food and retreated quickly to its mother's side. The other cubs watched with interest as their sibling ate. "The mother first," Jiho told Sunma. "Set up the heater while I check her injuries." He moved slowly, keeping his movements calm and steady. The wolf watched him but didn't growl. Perhaps she sensed their intentions, or perhaps she was simply too weak to fight. Jiho's trained eyes quickly found the problems. Multiple fractures in her right leg. Probably internal injuries too. She's in shock and hypothermic. He pulled out an emergency thermal blanket. "Sunmai, get me the medical kit. We need to stabilize her before we can move her." As they worked, the storm grew stronger. The portable heater created a small bubble of warmth around them, but the wind threatened to tear away the thermal blanket. Snow collected on their shoulders and heads as they focused on their task. Suddenly, a bright light cut through the storm from above. The Rayon ship had descended closer, its powerful beams illuminating the small group. Jiho didn't look up. He kept working, his hand steady as he treated the wolf's injuries. He had made his choice, and no alien observers would stop him from saving these lives. The mother wolf's eyes met his, and in that moment, Jiho saw something beyond the pain in her gaze. Trust, perhaps, or at least acceptance of his health. One of the cubs had fallen asleep against his leg, while the others watched curiously as he worked. Outside their small circle of warmth, the storm raged on, but Jiho felt a sense of peace. He knew, whatever happened next, he had made the right decision. The bright lights from the Rayon ship created long shadows in the snow. Jiho kept working on the mother wolf, his hands moving carefully as he wrapped her injured leg. The portable heater hummed steadily, fighting against the bitter cold of the storm. 3 tall figures emerged from the ship. Their white suits glowed softly as they walked through the deep snow toward the small group. Hei-yun led the way, her data tablet creating blue light patterns on the snow beneath her. "Dr. Park," Hei-yun said, her voice clear despite the howling wind. "Your actions are not logical. These specimens were marked for natural mortality." Jiho didn't look up from his work. "They have names, not specimen numbers. The mother is fighting to live. Her cubs need her." He checked the wolf's temperature with a digital thermometer. "Sunmai, we need to warm her up faster. Adjust the heater." Hei-yun moved closer, her head tilted in a way that showed her confusion. The adult female has multiple severe injuries. Our scans show organ damage. The survival probability is now at 6.2%. Numbers don't tell the whole story, Jaiho said firmly. He gently touched the mother wolf's side, checking for broken ribs. The wolf watched him, but remained calm. Look at her eyes. Look at how she's still trying to protect her cubs. She wants to live. Yum-Ki, the junior scientist, stepped forward with his scanning device. The cubs are showing signs of malnutrition. Their body temperatures are below normal range. Even if the mother survives, their development has been compromised. Sunlei looked up from where she was feeding the smallest cub. They just need care and time. We can help them get stronger. The third Rayon scientist moved around the group, taking readings. The mother wolf's eyes followed their movements, but she seemed to understand they weren't a threat. One of the cubs had fallen asleep against Jaiho's leg, while another watched the aliens with curious eyes. Your emotional attachment is affecting your judgment, Heiyun said. You risk your own safety in these weather conditions. The logical choice is to let nature take its course. Jaiho finally looked up at her. Snow had collected on his shoulders and hair, but his eyes were bright with determination. Logic isn't everything. Sometimes you have to listen to your heart too. Hearts are circulatory organs, Yum-Ki said. They do not provide decision-making input. He means we must consider feelings alongside facts, Sunmai explained, wrapping a small warming blanket around the cubs. These wolves are a family. They need each other. We can't just walk away because some numbers say they might not make it. Heiyun watched as Jaiho finished bandaging the mother wolf's leg. Despite the cold and the storm, the small group had created a pocket of warmth and care. The cubs were already looking more active after eating, and the mother's breathing had become more stable. Your methods go against our research protocols, Heiyun said, but her voice held a note of uncertainty. We do not interfere with natural selection. Maybe your protocols need to change, Jaiho suggested. He checked the mother wolf's vital signs again. Every life has value. Every creature deserves a chance to fight for survival. If we have the power to help, we have the responsibility to use it. The storm continued to rage around them, but inside their small circle of light and warmth, something was changing. Heiyun's tablet blinked with new data, showing small improvements in the mother wolf's condition. The numbers were changing, defying their earlier predictions. Sometimes, Jaiho thought as he worked, the most important changes start with a single act of kindness. The storm had lessened slightly, though snow still fell around the small group huddled in the valley. The portable heater continued its steady work, creating a warm space where humans, aliens, and wolves shared an unlikely moment together. Heiyun stood watching as Jaiho prepared a special mixture of nutrients and medicine for the mother wolf. Her long fingers moved across her tablet, recording everything she saw. The wolf's vital signs were improving, though slowly. It didn't match any of their previous data on similar cases. I do not understand, she finally said. Our studies show that helping weak members of a species weakens the entire population. Natural selection removes the unfit. Jaiho carefully fed the medicine to the mother wolf, who took it without resistance. Nature isn't just about survival of the strongest. It's also about cooperation and care. Look at how these cubs stay close to their mother, how they try to keep each other warm. That's natural too. Yum-Ki moved closer to examine the cubs. The smallest one was now sleeping peacefully, its belly full for the first time in days. But their genetic line shows weakness. The mother's injuries prove she was not careful enough. Sunmei shook her head as she adjusted the thermal blanket. Anyone can have an accident. That doesn't mean they deserve to die. Besides, this mother is strong in other ways. Look how she protected her cubs, even when she was badly hurt. The third Rayon scientist, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. Our data shows that predator species must maintain peak physical condition. Injury leads to death. This is the natural order. Maybe your data doesn't tell the whole story, Jaiho said gently. He pointed to the mother wolf's eyes. See how alert she is. She's fighting to live. She has something to live for. That counts for more than just physical strength. He-Yun moved closer to observe the wolf family. The mother watched her but didn't show any fear. One of the cubs had grown brave enough to sniff at He-Yun's suit, leaving tiny paw prints in the snow as it moved. Our species learned long ago to remove emotion from scientific study, He-Yun said. We believed it made our research pure, perfect. But watching you, she paused, searching for words. Perhaps we removed something important too. The mother wolf tried to lift her head, and Jiho helped her drink some water. The movement showed new strength in her muscles. The medicine was working, helping her body fight against the cold and pain. Emotions aren't a weakness, Sunmai explained, seeing He-Yun's interest. They help us connect, understand, and care. They make us try harder, find new solutions. Like now, we're not just saving one wolf family. We're learning from each other. Young Ki checked his readings again. The mother's survival probability has increased to 23.4%. This does not match our previous models. Because your models didn't include hope, determination, or love, Jaiho said with a smile. Sometimes the strongest force isn't something you can measure with numbers. As if to prove his point, the mother wolf managed to turn her head and gently lick one of her cubs. The small wolf yipped happily, pressing closer to her. He-Yun watched this simple act of affection, and something in her expression changed. I think, she said slowly, we have much to learn from humans about the true meaning of scientific observation. Perhaps our protocols need updating. The night had grown deeper, but the storm was finally beginning to calm. Inside the warm circle created by the portable heater, He-Yun made a decision that would change everything. She turned to Young Ki and spoke quietly in their own language. After a moment, he nodded and returned to their ship. Dr. Park, He-Yun said, turning back to Jaiho. Our vessel carries medical equipment that might help. Would you accept our assistance? Jaiho looked up from where he was checking the mother wolf's bandages. His face showed surprise, then happiness. Of course. Any help would be wonderful. Young Ki returned carrying a silver case. He opened it to reveal tools that looked far more advanced than anything Jaiho had ever seen. He-Yun picked up a small device that looked like a pen with a blue light at its tip. This can help heal internal injuries, she explained. We use it in our own medical facilities. I have never used it on Earth creatures before, but the principles should be similar. Sunmai watched with wide eyes as He-Yun moved the device slowly over the mother wolf's body. A soft blue light passed through the wolf's fur, and the readings on He-Yun's tablet showed immediate changes. The internal bleeding is stopping, He-Yun said, her voice showing a hint of excitement. The tissue is responding well to the treatment. The mother wolf's breathing became deeper and more regular. Her eyes looked clearer, and she managed to lift her head without help. The cubs sensed the change in their mother and moved closer, making small, happy sounds. The bone fractures will need more time, He-Yun continued, using another device that created a gentle humming sound. But we can speed up the healing process significantly. Jaiho watched in amazement as the advanced alien technology worked with the traditional medical care they had provided. The combination of human compassion and alien science was creating something new and powerful. The cubs need special care too, Sunmai said, holding the smallest one. They're still very weak from hunger. He-Yun turned to the third Ryun scientist. Bring the nutrient synthesizer, she ordered. When the device arrived, she adjusted its settings carefully. This can create milk that matches their mother's exactly. It will help them regain strength quickly. As they worked together, the differences between humans and aliens seemed to fade. They shared knowledge, compared methods, and learned from each other. The mother wolf watched them all with intelligent eyes, accepting their help with growing trust. Her survival probability has increased to 78.9%, Young Ki announced, checking his readings. For the first time, he sounded pleased about being wrong. Numbers are starting to matter less to me, Heyun admitted, helping Sun Mai feed the cubs with the synthesized milk. Watching these creatures fight for life, seeing how they care for each other, it has changed something in my understanding. Jaiho smiled as he watched the mother wolf gently nuzzle each of her cubs. Her movements were stronger now, showing the success of their combined efforts. Sometimes the greatest discoveries come when we open our minds to new ways of thinking. The night continued, but now it felt full of hope instead of danger. Above them, the stars began to peek through breaks in the clouds, as if nature itself was approving of this unexpected partnership between species. 1 week had passed since the night of the storm. Inside the Rayon research vessel, which now rested on the ground near the research station, Heyun prepared her daily report. Through the ship's large observation window, she could see the mother wolf and her cubs in a special recovery area the humans had built. The mother wolf was standing now, taking careful steps in the enclosed space. Her injured leg had healed remarkably well thanks to the combination of Rayon technology and human care. The cubs played nearby, their bodies strong and healthy from proper nutrition. Another successful day of recovery, Heyun said to Yumki as she recorded her observations. The mother's healing rate is 47% faster than our models predicted. Yumki nodded, but his attention was on something else. Through the window, they could see Jaiho sitting near the wolf family, quietly observing their behavior. The mother wolf often approached him now, allowing him to check her healing wounds without fear. I have been studying human medical records, Yumki said. They have many cases where patients survived despite very low survival probabilities. They call them miracle recoveries. Heyun looked up from her work. There are no miracles in science, she said, but her voice held less certainty than it would have a week ago. However, I admit our understanding of survival factors may have been incomplete. The ship's communication system activated, showing a message from Rayon Central Command. They had been very interested in the reports from Earth over the past week. The message read, "Request detailed analysis of human medical intervention techniques. Possible revision of research protocols under consideration." Heyun felt a sense of pride as she prepared her response. She had already begun documenting everything they had learned. The humans had taught them that successful medical care required more than just treating physical injuries. Outside, Sun Mai had arrived with food for the wolves. The cubs rushed to greet her, their tails wagging with excitement. The smallest cub, which they now called Little Fighter, had grown the most. It was hard to believe it was the same weak creature they had almost abandoned to die. Their social bonds have strengthened, Yumki observed, making notes on his tablet. The cubs show increased confidence and better hunting instincts despite their earlier setback. Heyun watched as Jaiho and Sun Mai worked together to check each cub's health. The mother wolf sat nearby, calm and trusting. "We should update our definition of species strength," she said thoughtfully. "It seems the ability to form bonds, to care for others, to accept help. These are also signs of fitness for survival." The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the snow as Jaiho began his daily physical therapy session with the mother wolf. He encouraged her to walk a little farther each day, staying close in case she needed support. The cubs watched and learned from their mother's determination. "I have made a decision," Heyun announced. "I will recommend that all Rayon research teams include a human consultant. We have much to learn from their perspective." Yumki looked surprised, but he didn't disagree. They had both seen too much in the past week to hold on to their old beliefs completely. Science was about discovering truth, and sometimes truth came in unexpected forms. As the day drew to a close, Heyun added a personal note to her report. "Perhaps the greatest discovery is not just what we can learn about other species, but what they can teach us about ourselves." 3 months had passed since the stormy night that changed everything. The morning sun shone brightly over the Alaskan wilderness as Jaiho, Sun Mai, and the Rayon scientists gathered for an important moment. Today was the day they would release the wolf family back into the wild. The mother wolf stood tall and strong, her once broken leg now fully healed. Her coat shone with health, and her eyes were bright and alert. The cubs, no longer tiny and weak, had grown into strong young wolves. They moved with confidence, ready for their next adventure. All final health checks are complete, Hei-yun announced, looking at her tablet one last time. They are in perfect condition. The mother's leg shows no sign of weakness. The cub's development is exactly where it should be. Jai-ho nodded as he finished packing away the last of their medical equipment. They're ready. They've been hunting small prey in the enclosure successfully for weeks now. The mother has taught them well. The small group walked together to the release site, a beautiful valley with good hunting grounds and natural shelter. Above them, 3 Rion research vessels hovered silently. They were the first of many new joint human-alien research teams, created after Hei-yun's reports had changed the Rion approach to wildlife study. The council has officially approved the new protocols, Hei-yun told Jai-ho as they walked. All future research teams must consider individual cases alongside statistical data. We will help creatures who show the will to survive, no matter what the numbers say. Sunmi smiled as she watched Little Fighter, the smallest cub who had grown into a confident young wolf. Sometimes the smallest chances lead to the biggest changes. They reached the release point, a clearing surrounded by trees. The mother wolf seemed to sense what was happening. She stood alertly, her nose testing the wind. The cubs stayed close, but their bodies were tense with excitement. "This is a historic moment," Yum-ki said, recording everything with his devices. The first successful joint human-Rion wildlife rehabilitation project. But more than that, it has taught us to see life differently. Jai-ho opened the transport cage door. The mother wolf stepped out gracefully, her cubs following close behind. She paused and turned to look at the group one last time. In her eyes, Jai-ho saw something that no scientific instrument could measure: gratitude. "Go on," he said softly. "Your freedom awaits." The wolf family moved forward together, their paws making soft prints in the snow. At the edge of the trees, the mother wolf lifted her head and howled. Her cubs joined in, their voices creating a beautiful song of freedom and life. The sound echoed through the valley, touching everyone who heard it. Hei-yun's tablet beeped with incoming messages from other research teams around Earth. Everyone wanted to learn about the new approach to wildlife study. The success of this case had opened doors that no one had thought possible. "This is just the beginning," Hei-yun said, watching the wolves disappear into the forest. "We have learned that true science must include understanding, compassion, and respect for all life." The mother wolf and her cubs vanished into their natural home, but their story would live on. Above them, the Rion vessels prepared to track their progress, not just with numbers and data, but with a new appreciation for the spirit that made each creature unique. Jai-ho smiled as he heard one last howl from the distance. "Every life matters," he said. "And sometimes, all it takes is one person refusing to give up, to change the way everyone sees the world."